I know when we speak to potential sellers, a lot of our work is, trying to explain the differences in the model and how it's different and the benefits of this route. I guess a lot of people have the traditional route as I won't say they're stuck mindset, but it's the way it's always been done. That's how they think it has to be. But there are specific benefits to the auction route that we often have to draw upon and make people aware of. So I'll let you guys elaborate if that's all right. But I know a big one is obviously timescale, and that what happens after bid accepted that is very different to what happens traditionally. So I think that's a big one to talk about, isn't it? If you guys are happy, sort of timescale and what happens after bids accepted.
Yeah, I personally think as well, because of the way the world is now, if you want to buy something, who now just goes on Amazon and has it delivered the next day? No one wants to be waiting 3-4 months anymore for things. I think the UK's buying habits have changed an awful lot. So by this being sort of the fastest method of purchasing a property, it kind of keeps up to date with the buying trends of the country. So yeah, I think that timescale front is massive for buyers. I think we're seeing it more for buyers now than before. I think more buyers are more open to it because of that. There's a certainty in there, and also the timescales. They're going to get their hands on their investment quicker and start realising profits rather than waiting 3 or 4 months with the money just sat there doing nothing. So yeah, I think that plays a massive part in it, in my opinion.
For the seller as well, the delay in a traditional sale is immensely expensive, isn't it? And I guess this comes into the second point. If I'm a seller and I use the traditional route, anyone can place an offer and it can be accepted, but there is no certainty of completion. It can take months. There's survey in between that can lead to further negotiation. They can, their mortgage offer can fall away. There's all these other things that can sort of happen. Almost offer accepted is irrelevant, isn't it? But not with the hammer falling. It's different at auction, isn't it? When that final bid's in, it's a very different onward process.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still correct in saying 1 in 3 private treaty deals still fall through. Is it still 1 in 3? So 33% chance of your deal not getting to completion, whereas ours is 0.6%. So the difference there is massive, isn't it? 33% compared to 0.6. It's just, it's a huge difference, and that's the major advantage to any seller, is they know they're getting that security. I think that's the main reason sellers come to us, is because they've maybe had 3 fall-throughs or the buyers withdrew or something, and they've just had enough. So they just know with us, once that hammer's gone, it's a done deal, 9 times out of 10. Well, should we say 99.4 times?
99.4%. Yeah. I would just, is it worth just saying, because I know we spend quite a bit of time on the phone to potential clients explaining that in effect. Well, I think the way I always describe it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will, if reserve is met or beaten, at the point that the highest bid is accepted, contracts are immediately exchanged, and completion is normally within 28 days. So I guess to draw the comparisons, all the things that can cast out on a traditional sale, mortgage offer, finance, survey later, all actually is done at the front of an auction, isn't it? So the legal pack presents all this information up front. The bid is to view, assess, digest. Not that they always do. That's a different conversation, isn't it? But
the options there. Have the information. That's the key.
So I suppose I'm just sort of drawing out the differences in the process. So if it was a traditional sale, they would make an offer, and then in effect they start doing their due diligence with the solicitor, because they start doing surveys, they start looking at searches. The auction process actually pulls that right forward in the
just flip it. Just flip the whole process. Flip it on its head. That's and it's kind of similar to the Scottish way, I guess, because they do sort of the same thing up there. More due diligence is done up front in Scotland than down here in England. Which,
yeah. One other thing I will touch up on, because I do actually see the slight increase in terms of timescales as a benefit to both sellers at times as well, in terms of if we have mortgage buyers on properties, the timescale for completion, although the 28 days is always an ideal scenario for anyone because it is the quickest option. It's 4 weeks, it's done, it's secure. Because you've already got your security there from the immediate exchange of contracts, we don't like to close the door on mortgage buyers, first-time buyers. I know we talked a lot about sort of landlord for investment properties, but even if people here, so even if any of these landlords that we've got with us today had a tenant serve the notice and say, right, okay, I'm leaving now, and they don't want to go down the route of having to find another tenant and think, you know what, now's a good time to try and sell up. If that property is vacant and we can get first-time buyers in there that are buying with a mortgage, anyone can now buy at auction. So in that event, we exchange contracts immediately. So they've still got the security that the deal is done. They know that this buyer isn't gonna pull away. They'll still get as far up the financial process as they physically can. So the majority of it's already done anyway. But we allow 56 days to completion with the vendor's permission for mortgage buyers, so that we're not limiting the amount of buyers out there for these investors that are selling their properties. And I think that, for me, is huge, because there is a lot of stereotypes around auction. You used to have to go to a room, put your hand up and have a briefcase full of cash sat next to you. As much as everyone would love a briefcase full of cash sat next to them, unfortunately it's not how the world is anymore. So the auction is also adaptable, and that completion time is both flexible to buyer, but more importantly the seller as well. So for whatever reason that seller needed a bit longer to complete, so whether they had stuff to clear out of the property and thought, you know what, the next 28 days I'm going on holiday in 2 weeks, I haven't got time to get out there and do it, can I opt to have a 56-day completion? Absolutely. So the landlord is in full control as to what that completion timescale looks like. If we want it in 28 days, like most people will, fantastic, we can do that. If you need a little bit longer, you need 56 days for whatever that reason may be, you need a bit longer, that's fine. But the most important thing is that deal is still secured from the point of exchange of contracts once that offer has been accepted. You've got the security there, the deal's not going anywhere. If you need 56 days or the buyer does for finance, then that is an option. So for me, I think that is also a benefit for both parties, that anyone can buy at auction. And it doesn't close the door on mortgage buyers or finance buyers, and there's always options out there for everybody.
Yeah, that's an interesting that is an interesting point, actually, because if I understand correctly, both parties can agree that, can't we, as the transaction goes on, if there's a...
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, even if you got 3 weeks into a 28-day completion, and the vendor, let's say the landlord, the vendor turns around and says, I'm actually not going to be ready to complete in time, you can say, right, okay, can we honour an extension until X date, give it another 2 weeks. If both parties agree on that, that's absolutely fine, and that works the opposite way as well. But likewise, if a buyer wants an extension and the seller says no, then the answer is no. You were told 28 days. That expectation was set from the offset. That's what we're working towards, and that's what we're going for. So there is flexibility in there, but the control is solely with the seller.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, it's useful. I guess whilst the process brings certainty, it's nice to hear that. I guess if a transaction needs it, there's flexibility, isn't there?
That's it. Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, we're there to get the seller a result. We work for the seller, but ultimately, we want the process to run smoothly for all parties involved. We understand buyers are. It's their livelihood. If it's an investment, it's their business. It's the, you know what I mean. It's kind of their income. But if you're a first time buyer, I mean, it's a very daunting process buying a house at the best of times, let alone via auction with all of these additional timescales thrown in at you. It can be quite overwhelming at times, and we like to understand that we are dealing with humans on both sides of the deal, and it's important that is understood, and that the process runs smooth for everyone throughout. And we'll always do that. I mean, we've got a team of people that deal with the sales progression between exchange and completion that work closely with the solicitors on both sides. So anything we can do to assist to help that deal through, any information that we can help that will provide the speed, the security, and assist with that, we'll do everything we can to help.
Excellent. No, thank you. That's because I know I have had buyers sort of have this concern. You know what I mean? If I get to day 29, I'll lose my fee, and that's the transaction gone. But it's not necessarily the case, is it?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it can be as enforceable as the vendor decides to go with. Really, if they understand the situation, think, you know what, okay, let's give it another 10 days, because if the vendor obviously is presented with options at that time. Really, do you want to stick to the 28 days? And let's say worst case scenario, and there's 0.4%, and the buyer can't complete on time. Do you want to pull the plug on that deal and try and find another buyer, or do you want to give them an extra week and get the deal through? That's ultimately that's ultimately the decision. And 9 times out of 10, you came here for one reason, and that's just security. If an extra couple of days is going to give you that security, it makes sense to do so.
But I guess it's nice for sellers, you know, that auction contract gives a lot of certainty, doesn't it? You know what I mean? There's a non-refundable fee being paid. You know, I'm actually, I know we've got the point on there about committed buys, and you know, for someone to enter into a auction contract to buy a property or a piece of land, you know, they've entered into a lot of commitment. They've been well vetted. They've registered with you guys. They've been through all the checks. Unlike accepting an offer from an estate agent, where there can still be a million questions about ability to complete, can't there?
Absolutely, and not only that, in the 0.6% of our sales that do fall through, because we take financial commitment from a buyer up front, the sellers are compensated for that. Whereas on the open market, if your buyer pulls out 4 months down the line, unfortunately, you've got to foot the bill for the work that's being done. Do you know what I mean? It's a horrible way to work, but that is how this country works in terms of. I'm sorry, it's dropped out. That's it. It's gone. There's nothing you can do other than try and find another buyer now. So we take financial commitment from the buyer again to provide additional security to the seller that in the worst case scenario, you are going to get some compensation for what's been for essentially the time that's been lost.
Yes. Yeah.